Backside exchange is just when the defensive end and the linebacker are going to switch gaps when the run goes away from them. So typically if we're getting some kind of zone run where all the linemen are moving in the same direction, this tackle's first steps are going to have to cut off the will. So he's going to step down and then he's going to work up. What this allows is this defensive end to work off his backside and come down the line of scrimmage unblocked. Right? Now what happens is the quarterback gets a read that's going to tell him to pull the ball. So if the running back is coming and you're getting some kind of zone where he's coming and the defensive end's being read, you're going to get the quarterback being told to pull the ball now, and this linebacker is actually going to be the one to come down and play him one-on-one. So what it's really good for is if you have a big defensive end who's getting beat by a quarterback, whether the read tells him to keep it or not, and he decides to keep it and just play one-on-one with him, it lets you get a better athlete against that athlete. The other thing it does is it lets you really take advantage and expose teams who pretend to read the end. There's a lot of teams who run a zone read, but it's not a read until the coach calls it. So if you get a team that's running a lot of zone read, but they don't pull the ball, you can really test, well, how practiced are you with pulling that ball, right? Do you have backside RPOs, or are you just going to put your quarterback one-on-one with a will linebacker? So I do have a clip of this, but first I want to go over, so one of the techniques we played at Guelph was like a double exchange, I'll call it. So basically all the D linemen are coming inside a gap, and the linebackers are coming outside, are playing the outside gaps. So even if this tackle steps inside, right, he's actually going to get beat by it's going to cause a lot of confusion because it really messes up double teams, and it lets you, your linebackers have a really clear read on what they have to do. So if all the D linemen are coming inside, really simply, the linebackers now become the outside fit players. And I know, old Guelph playbook, we used to call this crash, where everyone was crashing inside. But basically what it does now is it eliminates who they get to work their double teams to, and it changes who they have to block at the snap. Now, a lot of guys are going to say, well, it's kind of tough for my end to get inside. So I put some clips together of the front side exchange being run, where you can really clearly see that player take the inside gap from the outside and force that ball carrier to bounce, and what it does to the offensive line in terms of who they have to work their doubles on.
I think especially too in high school, this is the single exchanges. I think something people have seen, but that front side exchange or playing exchange even with a three tech, where your three tech is going to crash inside the guard, your end is going to crash inside the tackle. I think Saban calls that Jimmy Pony. That's one of the things that I think in the last couple of years been one of the most interesting things I've seen kind of introduced into the game. Is that non-traditional run fit. Right, you're going to align in one way and then fit the run differently based on what you get. And I think that while there is an element of movement and it can stress you out a little bit as a coordinator, like we'll see here in this clip, it's tough as an offensive lineman. You don't just get to tee off on that base block anymore, right? All of a sudden now that guy has a two-way go and the linebacker is going to make him right. That's tough up front.
So let's look at this. I know it's a three-man front, but we can think of this man as a down lineman because that's what he traditionally plays. So basically these guys are going to work up here. They're going to try and go some kind of double team that leads them to Mac, and this guard is going to look to take over this nose tackle, right? Because they know somebody has to play this gap here on 1st and 10. What it doesn't account for, though, is if this man comes up the field and inside, how it changes the tackle's track and how the guard really never has a chance to see him, right? Effectively, what it does now is it forces the run to bounce, and it also creates a free player at the point of attack. So the Mac right now is who they want to work their double team up to, but they don't see him coming across, right? He may see him, but he's thinking that he's going to fit this gap still. So as soon as this man moves inside, he has the clear fit outside, and the guard will never get to this defensive end. I shouldn't say never, but the guard will have a real struggle to get to that defensive end, and the linebacker will be free right at the point of attack.
I think this is one way, and we did a little bit of this stuff in Cambridge. I remember a couple of years ago because we were getting teams that would run inside zone and counter. That was the two main things we were getting, and so our ends were having a hard time. Okay, if they're reading you, we want you to play that shuffle technique, and you have the quarterback. But if they down block and pull for you, we want you to wrong shoulder that puller, right? We were having a hard time marrying those two ideas together in our run fit. So we would just play a double one tech front, or where the two tackles were in the A gaps, and then we would essentially play this with the D ends on both sides. So we'd play like a double exchange, like you're talking about, and it allowed our D ends to say, hey, no matter what, you're still, if it's passed, you can rush the C gap. You're aligned in the C gap. You're in that six technique. But if you get a down block, right, you can chase it. If you get a down block and a puller, your chase is going to turn into that wrong shoulder, which we want. And then it even gave us the added benefit of, the two main teams we were playing had a big, strong O-line, and we wanted to try and bounce the run. So even on the front side of zone, like you see here, now that back is running to the sideline.
We got another clip here of this double exchange happening, right? Same players making the play. So again, he's going to line up in the C gap, but he's going to play the B gap, right? So he's going to wait for contact so that this double team can't read him, right? Now, because the double team is reading this Mac and he's staying on leverage, there's no eyes out to 39 here, right? It lets him come clean, penetrate, get first hands on the ball. And now, again, you're getting two free hitters essentially, or at least a free hitter at the point of attack. Right? One of the recommendations about this, I probably wouldn't run this if my middle linebacker is 220 pounds plus at the high school level, right? Because what you're depending on now, let's say that this isn't, you don't have this guy here, he's out in coverage, and this play bounces to him, and this guy doesn't make the tackle. Now you got a running back one-on-one in space with a linebacker. You better have the right kind of linebacker who can actually make that tackle.
And I think the other thing that brings up too is all these choices. It's not like there's one right way to do it, right?
Yeah.
We play a lot of teams, and whether that's in the summer or with in the OUA level, where they do things simply really well, and that's a great way to do it. But if you're struggling, if you're looking for an answer, and you can't always scheme those things out, but you want to give your players something they're confident in. So, like you brought up, if you have maybe an undersized linebacker, right, who you're playing in the box in high school because he's one of your best athletes, and maybe it's an 80, the league you're playing in is 80% run, right? Or even 70% run. But you're playing that guy, maybe he's a DB in summer football, or maybe he'll be a Sam linebacker at the next level, but he's your best tackler, so you're playing him in the box. This is a way that he doesn't have to stand there and fill the A gap on inside zone, right? He can fit a gap that makes a little more sense for him with still keeping him in that middle core of your defense.
Yeah, and I think something that a lot of coaches have noticed is there's more and more hybrid players now and less guys who fit the traditional molds, right? So when you have those hybrid players, use them in a way that plays to all of their strengths rather than, what do you know at the time that you think works best? Because what you do and works best with one team won't necessarily carry over and work that well with another team. Same thing, you could have the same players and try and run the same scheme, but may not have the same success because you're playing a different set of offenses, right? So you got to not only adapt to yourself, but adapt to your opponent and find what works best at that time.
Thanks for watching that great clinic from Coach Charlie Taggart. For more like it, make sure you like, follow, and subscribe on all our platforms.